This is 1 in 59, a presentation of Anderson Center for Autism. 1 in 59 is a weekly show devoted to topics related to autism spectrum disorder.
Good morning and welcome to 1 in 59, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, Chief Development Officer at Anderson Center for Autism. And this morning, I am really excited to be speaking with Marc Garcia, who is the President and CEO of Visit Mesa. Marc, good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be with you.
Thank you. It's great to have you on the show. I know that you're here today to talk with us. Well, you're not here. You're out in Arizona, and you're talking with us about Visit Mesa. I'd love for you to just start with maybe an overview of what Visit Mesa is and how and why you are involved in it, and we'll go from there.
Well, Visit Mesa is what's called a Destination Marketing Organization, or DMO. We're also known as Convention and Visitors Bureaus. Some of your listeners may be familiar with a Convention and Visitors Bureau, but many of us in this DMO business have begun to change our organization names from, in our case, in 2012, we were the Mesa Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we changed our name to Visit Mesa. So many others across the country have done the same, because it more aptly describes who we are, what we do. We're in the business of selling, marketing, promoting our cities, our destinations for both business and leisure travel. So we're the official travel resource for Mesa, Arizona, and the surrounding region. And when I say surrounding region, I'm really talking about the southeastern portion of Maricopa County, or the Valley of the Sun, as some of your listeners may be familiar with. So that's what we're in the business of doing. We do that in a number of different ways, obviously through consumer advertising, both paid content, a lot of paid content, and also things that are more ephemeral. We also do lots of social media. And then in direct sales, we're targeting specific market segments. In our case, we're focused on the leisure traveler, so we're working with wholesale tour operators, travel agents, putting packages together, new and unique packages for the consumer. And then we do quite a bit in youth and amateur sports. We've built a pretty good reputation here in Mesa as being a strong, smaller to medium-sized sports destination. Our strengths are really in youth and amateur golf, baseball. We have 2 spring training facilities here. We're the home for the Chicago Cubs for spring training, as well as the Oakland A's. So we have 2 stadiums here with practice fields. And obviously, when we're outside of spring training, those fields are open for other types of events. So we book those facilities and those fields all year round. And then we do quite a bit in aquatics. We have 2 of the best pools in the western United States. In fact, the last 2 times that Michael Phelps came out of retirement in preparation for the coming Olympics, he did so in a Mesa pool. So we do quite a bit in those areas. And we've had a lot of success. You know, we've increased sales here 795% over the last 7+ years. Got a great team here, great destination, and we love selling Mesa.
Wow, 795%. That's amazing.
It is.
And take us back then, over 7 years ago. What was going on in Mesa? Was it just not a well-known area? Was it being overshadowed by other cities nearby?
Well, I think there's probably a little bit of that. I think it was just a little bit of a different approach about how to sell the destination. You know, we were still transitioning out of, a print advertising world into the digital space. I think that our destination was probably slower to make that transition. It's probably number one. Number two, a lot of the focus here, and this is, not trying to impugn, previous leadership or anything. It was just different philosophy. A lot of the focus was on spring training, and it was on March, or the last 2 weeks in February through March, and focusing on the Chicago Cubs, especially. At that time, the Oakland A's weren't in Mesa yet. And so, we decided that it was more appropriate for this organization, at least, to focus on the other 46 weeks out of the year when the hotels really need our help. They're running 92 to 100% occupancy in March, where the DMO isn't needed as much as the other 46 weeks out of the year when, there are shoulder periods or need periods in the summer. And so that's where we really targeted our focus and, again, hired a really tremendous, aggressive, and talented sales staff. And that's really why we've seen the growth that we've seen.
Well, that's great to hear. I have a question about the people who are longtime Mesa residents. So people who've lived in the area through this transition. What's the general reaction to the focus on expanding Mesa, Arizona's sort of destination presence to, I assume, the world? This is not just a focus of targeting leisure travelers from the United States. I would assume that this is broader than that. So has there been any opposition to it? Has there been any challenges involved in kind of shining a bright spotlight on this one city that you've noticed?
I don't think so. This is a tremendous city with a tremendous amount of pride. I don't know if you know this or your listeners do, but we're the 35th largest city in the country. In terms of population. We're bigger than, for example, a Miami or a Pittsburgh, at least in terms of city proper, not necessarily the greater area. And people are proud of the fact that we've grown for all the right reasons. You know, we have Apple here and Google, and Boeing has a big presence, McDonnell Douglas, and it continues to grow. I mean, when the census comes out, they're forecasting that when the 2030 census comes out, we actually will have passed Tucson to become the second largest city in Arizona. We're third now, second largest in Maricopa County, or the Valley, as I mentioned earlier. When it comes to residents, it's an interesting question, somewhat difficult to answer because of just by the nature of who we are and what we do. We don't really market to locals. So local residents very often don't see our work because we're marketing outside of Arizona in our feeder cities and our target markets. And in fact, it's something that our organization, our staff, and our board have been trying to address because the value proposition of an organization like ours, we feel, is very strong, but the average resident may not be fully aware of the benefits these visitors and their dollars bring to the community. And so we're actually making a concentrated effort now. Your question is timely because our board has made a strategic decision to begin to approach local residents, get them involved in building the destination and planning for the destination. So we're doing surveying actually now of local residents about how they see or what they see the future of Mesa being, especially as a brand, as a visitor destination.
That sounds important. I would think, you've used the word pride a few times in terms of, you think that most people who live in Mesa feel a sense of pride about this city. I thank you. I did not know that Mesa was the 35th largest city in the country. It's good to know. And it does sound like a wonderful place to be. But I also wonder, again, about that sense of pride also hopefully comes with it a sense of understanding and knowledge about what is happening in one city that is making it stand out from maybe others. So I love hearing that you're now starting to bring some surveys and gather some information from the people who've lived there and grown up there in terms of what the connection is. I agree with you also that it's important for people who live in any area to, you're not going to necessarily have everybody decide that having an influx of people or visitors or tourism is always a fantastic thing. Every once in a while, somebody might want to just have, maybe things feel a little bit like they were decades ago or generations before or something like that. But the recognition of what high tourism can do economically and, that impacts everything. It impacts, quality of life, employment opportunities, educational opportunities for the people that live there. So I'm happy to hear that you're making that connection. Before we take a quick break, I wanted to also ask you about, do you keep data on the number of visitors? I know you said you had a 795% growth increase in terms of sales, so I would assume that means like marketing sales. Is that what you're talking about, advertising? Well, it's really related to booked hotel room nights. Okay, all right. And that's typically the chief performance measurement of an organization like ours. It's how many direct hotel room nights you're able to, as an organization, contract on behalf of your city. Okay. Well, that's good to know also. So that makes sense to me. And that's an enormous increase. Very exciting to hear that. Do you keep data on how far away or the areas that many of your visitors come from? Is there a certain part of the world that seems to be coming more frequently than others? Or is there like a farthest away kind of statistic?
We study and research everything.
All right. Lay it on me. What have you got?
Yeah, Arizona, inside the state, will always be the largest driver. So there's people that, maybe live in Tucson or they live in Flagstaff or other areas of the state that come in for an event, or they're coming to visit family but stay at a hotel. So Arizona itself is always going to be the largest market, if you will. Outside of Arizona, it's California, specifically Southern California. We've seen a real growth in the Dallas market. Colorado has always been a good market for us. Obviously, Chicago and Greater Chicago, with its affinity, long 60-plus year affinity with Mesa, with the Cubs being here.
Yeah,
it's a strong market, and not just for Mesa, but for Phoenix and Scottsdale and the entire valley. The Pacific Northwest has become an active market for us. Obviously, again, we're home of the Oakland A's, so South Bay, East Bay, that's a target for us. But getting into Portland and Seattle as well, we're seeing growth there. And several of the upper Midwest markets, especially those that can reach us, connect with us via Allegiant Airlines out of our airport, Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport. There are a number of upper Midwest connections from those cities. So those are really our target areas. We see a little bit out of the East Coast, especially in Philadelphia and in New York, and those continue to grow. But the ones I mentioned earlier are really our chief markets.
Cool. I appreciate that you were able to share so much detail, and that does kind of put it into context for me. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I'd like to dive into the autism-specific aspect of our conversation. And that's going to, I think, provide a lot of information to the listeners of this show and podcast. So this is 1 in 59, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and we'll be right back. Have you driven by Anderson Center for Autism? Have you ever wondered what we're all about? Well, we're a state-of-the-art educational program. We're a nurturing home away from home. We're a community resource. We're a training center for people from all corners of the globe. We're a deeply devoted family of professionals who utilize evidence-based practices to optimize the quality of life for people with autism. And we're here for you. Call us today at 845-889-4034 or visit us online at andersoncenterforautism.org to learn more. Welcome back to 1 in 59, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky, and I'm speaking today with Marc Garcia, President and CEO of Visit Mesa, a destination marketing organization otherwise known as Convention and Visitors Bureau. But I agree with what you said earlier, Marc. I think Visit Mesa kind of is comprehensive and is a great message, and certainly encourages people to find out more about, why I should visit Mesa, Arizona. So thank you again for being on the show.
It's my pleasure.
So you spent we spent the first part of the show talking kind of overall about Mesa, Arizona, some of what you do as president and CEO of Visit Mesa and what your organization is involved in, the amazing growth that you've seen in terms of helping Mesa become a really strong destination for tourism and rec and leisure. You mentioned the Chicago Cubs and the Oakland A's having spring training facilities there and some amazing pools. I'm already kind of thinking, okay, when am I heading out there? So so it already sounds good. I happen to love the climate in Arizona. I know a lot of people, I know it's hot, I get that, but the dry heat out in Arizona is something that I've always enjoyed the couple times I've had the chance to be out there. So I know it's beautiful, and you're coming probably out of your super hot season. Is that correct? The summer is very,
we are
very
indeed,
hot.
yeah. It's a little cloudy today. It's been raining the last couple of days, but it's been lovely, and the evenings have been gorgeous.
Nice. Well, I've known a couple people who've retired out there and moved from where I am in the New York area out to Arizona, and by and large, they love it. And we don't see them a whole lot after they go out there, which I understand, especially the winter when we're getting ice and snow. Okay, so I want to move the second half of the interview into the autism supportive aspect of Visit Mesa and what the entire city has been going through from your perspective perspective in the process that you're still involved in, I know, of becoming an autism supportive city. Can you talk to us about, first and foremost, I guess, the decision to move in that direction, and then kind of give us a sense of where you are and what it would be like? Let's say I, wanted to bring my family out there, and I do not, I want to disclose that, but if I or a family had a loved one on the spectrum and wanted to go out for a family vacation, kind of what would you recommend we do?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of ground to cover there, so bear with me. This is a personal decision. This affects me personally. My son, who's 5 now, was diagnosed at 14 months with severe autism. And as you may have discovered through looking at our webpage and some other resources, that you've heard me say it rocked my world, and it really did, and my wife and the rest of our family. And you begin to ask questions: where do you get services? Mm-hmm. How do you get services? Where do you go for these types of services? Whether it's what you discover later, ABA and IEDs and all these other acronyms. And obviously we're at the beginning of our journey. He's only 5, and many of the other questions that we still have will be answered in time. But it really happened about 3 years ago. We typically go to Southern California for our own family vacation, and while at some of the hotels and the restaurants and attractions, it was a bad week. He was having some meltdowns. Mm-hmm. And, then you start to get these stares from other people. Those stares that make you feel uncomfortable, unwelcome, a little bit, uninvited. And it's not a good place to be. It's an uncomfortable place to be. And I said, this just isn't right. And it's not like it was the first time we received those stares, you get those even at home when you're at the grocery store and your child has a meltdown, mm-hmm. and you get those same stares. So it had been building, and then while we were on vacation, it happened. And I said, you know what, this is not right. This I need to do something about this, at least in my professional life. I'm in a position where I can do something about this. And that was really when the light bulb went off. So I came back and talked about these personal experiences with my board and said, this is something that we need to do. And I'd already begun to do a little bit of research. Knew obviously 1 in 59 children born today will eventually be diagnosed with autism. 1 in 39 boys. Yeah. And started to share some of those statistics with my board. I said, I think we need to do something about this. And you know what? Yes, it's the right thing to do. And yes, this is personal for me, but I think based on what I'm discovering, this is at that time, 3 years ago, I think this could be a great business decision. Mm-hmm. Because this is a massively growing consumer base that's underserved. And I felt like we could get out in front of it. We could do something pretty special. Mm-hmm. And then as I went through that research process, I came across autismtravel.com and looked at their survey. And one of the survey questions was, do you currently take vacations as a family? 87% said no. Yeah. Are you satisfied with current travel options for families with autism? 89% responded no. Mm-hmm. Would you be more inclined to travel if autism-friendly options were available? 93% said yes. Mm-hmm. 32 million travelers, 32 million people with disabilities do take vacations. It's a really large market. $262 billion is spent on autism-related services in the United States each year. So again, I said this is an opportunity here. Mm-hmm. So then I started to discover, okay, well, how do you do this? Who do we work with? And then, through that discovery phase, I said, what about certification? I want something a little bit more than, working with some organization where you spend a little money and eventually get to put a sticker in your window and saying you're autism, quote unquote, friendly. I wanted something more substantive, something that was authentic, that was real, that the autism community would know was real, that it had some teeth, that there was a top to bottom educational platform for employees in our industry. And that's when I stumbled across the International Board of Credentialing and Continuing Education Standards, or IBCCES, out of Jacksonville, Florida, saw that they were doing these types of certifications and training in healthcare and in the classroom, in the education space, and they've been doing it for 20-plus years. But recently, and by recent I mean, over the past 7-8 years, they had gone into the travel and tourism space. Obviously, being in Florida, it's a natural travel destination. I think they recognized it was important for them to get into this space, and they began working with SeaWorld and the Space Center in Houston and beaches, resorts. And I said, wow, let me give them a call. And, after, long story short, after about a 6 to 8 week process, and knowing that no city had ever tried to do this, to get their entire travel destination and all their partners certified in autism, that we discovered if we can get 60 businesses, 60 of our partnering businesses, and those are primarily hotels, attractions, restaurants, and service-related businesses to the travel and tourism business, that we could achieve this designation. Again, it hadn't been done before, so we had to work together to determine something that was tough to reach, but yet reasonable. And that's when we landed on about 60 of our businesses, and 80% of their front-facing or guest-facing staff would have to go through this training.
Yeah. I remember I on the show, I actually interviewed somebody representing IBCCES a while ago. And I remember them talking. They have some very specific criteria of how many employees of said organization or said business need to be trained in order to receive their certification. Interesting.
Yeah. And they can be pretty rigid about that.
Yes.
Which is what is attractive about it for me.
Right. You wanted something, you said before, you wanted something with teeth and something that really had that sort of accountability of how many people and how committed the businesses had to be. I'm only interjecting because we only have about a minute and a half left, and I want to. Your description is very, very helpful about your decision and your personal experience, which I think is shared by so many other families also, and the process. Where are you today? I know you're not finished with the process and the training and all the certification, but can you give us a number? How many businesses as of now have gone through the certification?
We're at about 50 right now.
Okay.
So we feel very confident. In fact, we've already established a date. November the 18th is when we were making our announcement. Obviously, we've made sure that everybody feels comfortable, including IBCCES, that we're going to reach that number by then. We feel very confident. There are at least 2.5 more dozen businesses that we're currently talking to that we feel very encouraged with those conversations that they will also come on board. So November the 18th, when we're going to be making this announcement, all of our major hotels, our biggest hotels, our branded or flagged hotels have joined in this effort, this community-wide effort with us. Several of our signature restaurants and attractions, all of our museums have signed up, and they've either by now have already gone through the training or they're currently in the process, many of which have also decided to do an on-site audit with IBCCES, where they come in and spend the day and they go throughout the business, the attraction, the hotel, what have you, and they're developing sensory guides for each of those.
Awesome.
So what I haven't talked about is the deliverables.
We are unfortunately
are we?
just about out of time. But no, I think that for the purposes of this interview, you've covered a lot, because while the deliverables are clearly important, the idea that you have gone, you're going through this and you're going to be making this announcement, I want our listeners to understand that they should now go check out Visit Mesa and learn more, because I know I've been to your website. I've seen some of the videos and links that are up there. There's a lot of information there. So let's get that out so people know where they can get more information.
Sure. It's autismtravelaz.com. Right now, it's really more of an info page, but after November 18th, it'll be a programmable page where you can receive the deliverables like our Autism Travel Guide, the geocaching program, see the new video of the family we flew out from Buffalo, where they sort of audited our destination.
Oh, cool.
And we're going to be cutting and splicing that. Yeah, so a lot of things are coming still. So look out for that page to transition over the next couple months.
Excellent. And I'm sorry to cut it short, but there's so much information here. Please visit autismtravelaz.com. And Marc Garcia, President and CEO of Visit Mesa, kudos to you. Congratulations. And thank you for what you're doing in your city. I'm very excited to follow up and see how it's going now and into the future after November 18th. So well done.
Thank you so very much for having me and allowing us to share our story.
Awesome. This is 1 in 59, the weekly talk show on topics related to autism spectrum disorder. I'm your host, Eliza Bozensky. And remember, Anderson cares.
You've been listening to 1 in 59, a presentation of Anderson Center for Autism. Join us for another edition of the show at the same time next week.